you're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a poor little me.
Do you feel it?
Yes, we do.
A worldwide awakening is upon us. Welcome to the Universal Consciousness Show. The Universal Consciousness Show, where we explore topics such as UFOs, aliens, banned medical cures, as well as classified secret knowledge. Come question your holographic existence. Share experiences from the other side. This is a show that will expand your mind as we decrypt the symbolic messages locked away deep within your DNA. And now, your guides for this magical journey. The hosts of the Universal Consciousness Show, Aage, Nost, and Diana Seraphim.
Hello, hello. Yeah, you are listening to the Universal Consciousness Show, and this is the show for the thinking global citizen. And you know, there is a lot less of us than there is of the other 7 billion people on this ball of mud called Earth. But there's a lot of us here on this show listening, so we are going to delve into the depth of mystery. We have a very fascinating guest with us today, and her name is Dr. Irena Scott. And but first, I want to let you know how you can connect with us. My name is Aage, and I'm one of the hosts. And my co-host, Diana, she is stuck at work, so she just can't be with us today. But she'll be here next week. And for those of you that like to hear this show again, you can go to the archives or wherever we have this show listed and posted. You can go to the universal-consciousness-show.com. You can go to YouTube under the same name, Universal Consciousness Show. We are on Facebook under my name and the show name. And we're also on Twitter, iTunes, TuneIn, and a whole bunch of other places. And of course, also on kcurradio.com, and look in the archives and you will find the show. So there is also at the bottom of the KCUR radio website, if you are listening there, then there is a donate button. And we sure would appreciate it if you also was able to support us that way. It tells us that we are doing the right thing, and we appreciate you very much. If you are here just listening, we sure appreciate you. We love you out there, because without you, there would be no us. So here we are, and let me get to Irena here. Talk a little bit about that. You're going to want to stay with us to the end of this show, because our guest has been behind the curtain where the cover-up of the UFO issue happens. She has a very extensive education, and I want to mention some of that because it actually gives a little more credibility to some of the things you are going to hear. And of course, she has written several books. This I got to take from memory, but there was UFOs Today, Sacred Corridors, I think was the last book that she wrote. And then she has one, UFOs Today, 70 Years of Misinformation and Government Cover-Up. And another one, Inside the Lightning Ball. And we're going to hear some of this. And I want to mention a little bit of her bio here, because this is important. Dr. Irena Scott received her PhD from the University of Missouri College of Veterinary Medicine in Physiology, and this postdoctorate research at Cornell University, and she was a professor at St. Bonaventure University. Her MS was from University of Nevada and her BS from the Ohio State University. Gosh, she's been everywhere getting education. And that was on astronomy and biology. And she has done research and teaching at the Ohio State University College of Medicine and the University of Nevada. The Defense Intelligence Agency, that's the DIA, folks, they employed her as a PhD level, that's a GS-11, to do research in satellite photography, including in its, this is the term, Air Order of Battle section. Oh, we're going to hear about that, which involved aircraft identification with above top secret clearance. That wasn't just top secret, that is above top secret, because there are many levels of top secret above the bottom top secret. So she was also employed at the MS level work as a physical scientist and catalog. She was working with the DMA Aerospace Center. So there's a lot of stuff that she has had access to. And I want to say welcome to the show, Irena. We're looking forward to this.
Well, I'm sure looking forward to it. I'm sure glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, yes. We would really like to hear what you got to say. And my first question is, what made you come out and talk about some of the things that you, and the experiences that you had and what you have found behind the curtain? What made you come out and do this now? And I'm sure they told you not to talk about it, but you're doing it anyway. What made you that decision?
What made me come out was that I had my own experiences. And so due to seeing things with my own eyes, I think there's something to it. And this made me come out of the closet, the UFO closet.
Well, I imagine when you have your own experience, and then on top of that, you get confirmed that your own experience was real by some of the papers and things that you found on the inside, that, I imagine that would be hard to keep to yourself, wouldn't it?
Well, I think it must be easy because I think other people have experiences too, but not too many people in the scientific field talk about them. Some people do, though. But
yeah. Talk a little bit about your own experience, maybe first, because I want to get to also what you learned on the inside in the DIA. But let's first maybe talk a little bit about your own experience also.
Well, my sister and I had two experiences together. Once when we were kids and once when we were adults. And the first one was when we were real young kids. She was about 4 and I was about 6. And we'd never heard of UFOs or anything. We were very poor and lived on a family farm. And we're sleeping in an attic room. She on one side of the room and me on the other. And it was night, and it was a clear night. And I woke up. And there was this thing flying around our room. And it was like a little piece of metal. It just glowed all the time. And I figured out, we were both pretty young, but I noticed that it seemed to be guided in a way, in that there was furniture and walls in the room. And it didn't hit anything. It would go toward a wall and then it would turn, or it would go toward furniture and then it would turn. And it just seemed to be, at first it was kind of like it was just randomly flying around the room. It didn't blink or anything. And it got kind of close to both of us. And then after it flew around for a while, it flew up to the ceiling, but it turned before it got to the ceiling. And it flew along the ceiling. And there was a chandelier in the middle of the room, but it was turned off, and it was dark in the room. But it seemed to know where the chandelier was, and the walls sloped up toward the ceiling, and it seemed to know where the walls were, and it started circling the chandelier right in between the chandelier and the walls, and it circled for quite a while, and then it made a spiral right down under, just a real geometric spiral right down under the chandelier. And suddenly we both became terrified, and that was the first I knew my sister was seeing anything. And we ran down the room shrieking and fell down the stairs and went yelling to our parents, and they thought we were crazy. But if it just happened to one of us, well, they would say, you were dreaming or something. But it happened to both of us, and neither one of us knew the other one was even watching anything. So It was years later we heard about UFOs.
Well, if it is flying and you don't know what it is, it's definitely a UFO.
Yeah.
But I know there are things out there also, especially in the sky. If it could be terrestrial things, but something like that invading your space there, I kind of think that maybe, what do you think, interdimensional character or something that came through the wall, or how would it get in there anyway?
We have no idea. We both woke up and it was in the room. It was years and years later that I read a book by Jenny Randles called Star Children, and it told about how young children will sometimes see orbs or balls of light in their rooms and things like that, and that's part of the UFO phenomena.
Yeah.
And often such people see UFOs later, and later on in their life, which we both did. But we had no idea what it was for years and years and years.
Yeah. And there are so many people out there that have had their own experience, including me and many of my friends. They've had their own experiences. And I guess there are still people out there that believe that this is all bunk. But I guess the saying goes that for the ones who have had the experience, no explanation is necessary. But for the one who have not had the experience, no explanation is possible. Right?
Right. Because if it didn't happen to me, I wouldn't believe it. But seeing it with my own eyes, well, that makes a big difference.
Yeah. And that experience probably stayed with you through your life. And then again, when you got to start working within maybe universities, and especially with the DIA, then it got more meaning to it. And I'm just itching to have you explain a little bit maybe what you experienced inside the DIA, the Department of... what is it?
Defense Intelligence Agency.
Yeah, that's right. Intelligence Agency. What did you actually see and experience on the inside of that?
Oh, what my job is it was called, one section I worked in was called the Air Order of Battle. And in that case, we were supposed to, our work was to, over a particular area of ground for my particular job, but other people had different areas. We were supposed to identify any flying object or object that could be flown over this particular area. It was it was classified because it was communist back then, and so our work was highly classified. But the DIA keeps track of every flying thing that could be of military interest.
Yeah. Yeah, so when they keep track of that, do they have classified them maybe as terrestrial or non-terrestrial, or how do they classify that?
Well, my work was just with military equipment, but while I was working for the DIA in that position, my sister and I had a real funny close encounter with a UFO. I was looking in Washington. She was living in New York, near New York, but we had this really weird experience. We went on vacation to the New England states and had something happen. And when I got back to the DIA, I had this real high security clearance, so I didn't say I see UFOs or anything like that because that would be trouble. But
Yeah.
I mentioned the subject, and it turned out that right before that had happened, my supervisors had turned in a UFO report to their supervisors. They had seen something that they thought was a UFO on the classified photography we had.
Mm-hmm.
And the supervisors behaved in this real weird fashion of telling them they didn't see it and it was a spot on the film and things, which it obviously wasn't. And so that made me think that the DIA probably knew more about UFOs than what they say.
Oh, I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did. And so you were kind of sheltered out of that arena some, or when you talked to other people within there, did you have any inkling that they may know something that they possibly could talk about?
No, because I didn't want to say, that I had seen a UFO, considering my job and clearance and everything. I just sort of mentioned it, and then my supervisors told me about it, and they showed me the photos of what they reported and everything. It certainly looks strange to me.
Mm-hmm.
I should have, if I'd have been a UFO person, I'd have pursued this more, but I wasn't really into UFOs at the time.
Yeah.
And
Air Order of Battle section, that the aircraft identification above top secret, was there any indication that there were something there that you saw that could be construed to be maybe of a strange origin?
Well, that's what they had reported, and it certainly looked odd to me, but I didn't pursue it or ask any more questions. If I'd been in UFOs, I would have.
Yeah.
But I did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But you had now, was it you started writing those books after you left the DIA then, right?
Yeah, I started in the DIA was one of my first jobs, and then after that, I went back and got a PhD in physiology and went into a different field.
Mm-hmm. So then the book Sacred Corridors, and how did that book come about, and what do you have in there?
Well, what I have in Sacred Corridors is that I'd worked for several government agencies, including, I had also worked at Battelle Memorial Institute, which had done a part of a study for Project Blue Book. And I had also been at Wright-Patterson and had seen the secured part of Wright-Patterson. And so Sacred Corridors was about information from that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what kind of information did you run across there? I know there were things in the Project Blue Book that there were several or quite a few cases actually that they were not able to explain away, even though they tried really hard. But maybe you got something on that maybe too?
Yes. Wright-Patterson is a highly secured place, and very, very, very few ufologists have been inside the secured area. It has a Air Force museum, and that's open to the public, and that's what most people are familiar with. But all the rest of it is surrounded by chain link fences and everything, and really secured. Mm-hmm. And I had been in the secured areas. And so I saw the famous Blue Room and was in it. But I had, since I was in the secured areas, I had read about where other people had written about informant data and things like that, where informants said there were different things. Mm-hmm. And I was there, so I had photographed the buildings and looked at the buildings to see if I could see anything that went along with the stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that they have, we hear anyway that they have both frozen aliens and ships there and things like that. And, the air base there is very big. And I think if they want to hide something, that's a good place to hide things because there's so much area where to hide it in. So you got in behind the some of the last fences, maybe where the real big secrets are. Then
I didn't. The most secret place I saw was what's called the famous Blue Room. Have you heard the story of Goldwater and how he wanted to see the Blue Room and he was rebuffed?
No.
Oh, well, when Goldwater was a presidential candidate, he had heard that they had aliens and things in this place of Wright-Patterson called the Blue Room.
Uh-huh.
And he was rebuffed by somebody intelligence. And anyway, that's sort of a famous story. But I and another person actually were in the building called the Blue Room. We didn't know it at the time, but we were actually there. We didn't get to see any. We were escorted and just went to a particular area and things, so we didn't, see any underground chambers. But it looked like it was very, very, very secure, and it looked like something that might well have had something like that in it. The building was in a secured area where the whole area was surrounded by chain link fences and things, but this particular building also had its own separate security areas, such as cameras on the roof and all kinds of little devices around the outside of it, things. And I thought there's stories about that it had underground chambers and things, and I thought that was probably right by the amount of security and the fact that the security zone was way off from the building too.
Yeah, I see now we got 30 seconds left before the break here, so let me hang on to that thought about the Blue Room, and also when you get back I want to talk more about the some of the other books that you got other information in. So stay with us and we will be back after the break.
You're listening to the Universal Consciousness Show. The Universal Consciousness Show. Your weekly connection to the truth.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Share your knowledge by calling our hotline number at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Call now.
Worldwide callers find us on Skype at KCOR Radio. It's time to abandon your fear and question what you think you know.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
More awakening awaits. After this, after this, after this, after this, after this, after this.
Radio signal Looking for cutting-edge conversations while exploring quantum possibilities? Then look no further.
We've got to fix it.
Broadcast Team Alpha, hosted by Nori Love and Aage Nost. They're connecting the dots and unraveling the cosmic mysteries with interviews from top experts, embedded insiders, and whistleblowers from around the world on an array of topics, from health, wellness, consciousness, and ufology, all in pursuit of
The truth.
Broadcast Team Alpha, hosted by Nori Love and Aage Nost. Live Tuesday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The balance of power is shifting in the world today, and the old paradigm is being replaced with a new one filled with love, positivity, and prosperity for all. The only question you have to ask yourself: are you ready for a change? Broadcast Team Alpha. Come explore the quantum possibilities.
Toxins are everywhere, from the air we breathe to the food we eat and the water we drink. In a world where 80,000 known toxins and heavy metals threaten our very existence, how are you going to protect yourself and your loved ones? Introducing Pure Body Extra Strength, the world's first colloidal zeolite that helps trap and remove toxins as well as heavy metals from your body that are messing with your memory, clarity, sleep, and focus. Don't just take our word for it or the testimonials from our thousands of happy customers. Check out the hundreds of articles and case studies on the National Institute of Health website proving zeolite's powerful ability to remove toxins. For a limited time, listeners to KCOR will receive 10% off their first order. To get started, go to trypurebody.com and enter promo code Radio10. Again, that's trypurebody.com. Toxic junk is all around us, but now you can take back control of your health and protect yourself by detoxing with Pure Body Extra Strength. You'll be on your way to sleeping better, thinking more clearly, and feeling more energetic. Go to trypurebody.com right now and get started today.
Monday nights are about to become hauntingly good, as Reverend Sean Whittington possesses the airwaves with Vegas Supernatural. Tune in every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for Vegas Supernatural, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. There's a war raging between good and evil. The question is, which side are you fighting on? Tune in Monday nights as Reverend Sean Whittington sets the new standard for paranormal radio with some of the most influential personalities in the world today. Vegas Supernatural, hosted by Reverend Sean Whittington, every Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The one show even the devil doesn't want you to hear.
Are you ready to go?
It's showtime! Hey!
Here we go, world.
You're listening to the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Crank this mouth.
Broadcasting from the heart of Las Vegas, Nevada.
Their base is so large it has to draw most of its power from the nearby nuclear fusion plant.
The future of radio is here and now.
Going live in 3, 2, 1.
It's time, once again, to unravel the mysteries of the universe by connecting the dots to a higher consciousness. This is the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Now the world will begin hearing us.
Share your knowledge by calling 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
It's as simple as that.
Find us on Twitter at KCOR Radio or use hashtag KCOR. Even better, join us on the live chat at KCORradio.com. Back to your enlightened hosts, Aage Nost and Diana Seraphim.
Hello. We are back with the Universal Consciousness Show, and we're talking with Dr. Irena Scott that has written several books on the 70 years of UFO cover-up. And she's been behind the curtain. She's seen and experienced some of it, and she's had her own experiences as well. And we were talking before the break about the Blue Room, and maybe a little bit more about what is in that Blue Room. I'm all ears.
Well, I was escorted, and the Blue Room's kind of famous, but I didn't know I was in it until later when I found out that the building I'd been in was the Blue Room. But all I saw was just offices, but it had security that made me think there were probably underground areas beneath it, because there was security way out from where the building was. It made me wonder. And also, it's in Wright-Patterson, and I'm sure they would have underground facilities where they could take their classified information if there was some kind of a emergency or something like that.
Yeah, and from what we hear from other people also, there is underground facilities where they store things and so on. But and the thing about it is that when it comes to what we call whistleblowers, there is always a risk involved, because I've had some information from someone else also in the past that if a whistleblower come forward and talk about general things, they can get away with that, and they can give some minor information. But if they go into detail, start naming names and so on, of who's behind the curtain and doing the dirty deed, so to speak, then they can lose their pension, their life could be threatened, all kinds of stuff that the government is capable of doing. So we got to be a little careful, I suppose, by some of the things that we both hear and what we talk about. But now this book about sacred corridors, why is it more timely now than maybe it would be a few years back? Is there anything about that you can say?
Yes, because I went into detail about Project Blue Book, and it was pretty timely, because my book was published right before the Project Blue Book show came on the History Channel. And so I had information in two ways about it. Three ways. One was about Wright-Patterson, but the other one was about the Battelle Memorial Institute, which is a big scientific outfit, had done a UFO study, and I had documents from that study that I added to the book. And then also the Project Blue Book History Channel show featured Dr. Alan Hynek, and I had a number of his handwritten letters in my book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, speaking of Dr. J. Allen Hynek, what do you think he knew that he did not talk about?
Well, I think he suspected a lot of things. I had some documents from people that worked at Battelle when he was working for Project Blue Book that had higher security clearances than he did. And so they thought he was sort of crazy at the time, but he was very scientific and really followed scientific method and everything, and found out he suspected a lot more was going on than what he was actually finding out. I mean, sometimes he went to meetings and they'd have security. Mm-hmm. And he would be not allowed to go to some of the meetings, but they would have other people going to the meetings and things that had higher clearances than he did.
Yeah, and also there was a secretary that worked with him that came forward and said that he had made comments to her in private saying that, this is, there are things out there that we cannot explain, and we know it is real, but we still cannot explain it.
Most of the letters I have were from a friend of his that worked for him when he was a professor at Ohio State, and also worked with him at Project Blue Book and worked in Project Blue Book and worked at Battelle. And so she had a good idea of what he knew and what he didn't know, and obviously thought there was a lot that he wasn't finding out about that the government knew. He started out as a debunker, and when we first contacted him, he was an astronomy professor at OSU, and they asked him if he would be interested in giving information about UFOs and his opinion. Well, he said UFOs, he was a debunker to start with, and he thought they were nothing, and just, people were crazy that saw them and things. And then when he got into his work for the government, he very slowly changed his mind. And at the end, he was probably the strongest proponent of UFOs being something that we didn't understand of anybody.
Yeah.
He wrote a number of books, and his work for the government really convinced him that a lot was going on.
Well, I think that anybody that studies this, they will come to the same conclusion. And there are people with NASA that has come forward now and saying, yeah, astronauts have said that we saw UFOs out in space. They were flying along with us. And then again, there is Bloomreach. He was working for NASA. He made a study of 18 months of all the accounts of activity on the moon that was available some 20 years ago. And both the Russian accounts of activity up there and the American accounts up there. And he said after 18 months of study that Earth has been visited by extraterrestrial beings and still are. I'm paraphrasing that because he used different words to it, but that's what he said. So there has been actually a form of disclosure. It's just that people don't recognize it. Government don't want to talk about it. And the best thing that the government know how to do is to stonewall an issue until it goes away.
Well, that's what they had been doing. 2 years ago, in 2017, they had the New York Times article about the ATIP program that of UFOs and the sightings by the Nimitz and the jet pilots and things like that, which was kind of like disclosure. And since then, more information has come out, and they've done scientific studies of what they've seen. And the actual jet pilots have even been on TV and discussed what they saw, and the radar people and everything else. So there's a lot more coming out. This was from the Navy, though. And the Project Blue Book was studied by the Air Force quite a number of years ago.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about some of the incidents that is written up in Project Blue Book? What do you think about? There are some of them that cannot be explained away. There's no chance of explaining it away. What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's some pretty convincing evidence. And, for example, in my book, I had statements from 3 of the top people at Battelle Memorial Institute expressing an interest in UFOs, which is pretty amazing. And one of these people had actually been the president of Battelle Memorial Institute when Roswell happened. And so I thought that was rather convincing to me that people in that high a level would have an interest and express it in UFOs.
Yeah. And now I also know that I think you were the director of MUFON. What was it? The director of MUFON that your position was?
I was
On the
director
board,
of publication
yeah.
in MUFON. And
you were on the board of directors on that was it. But what are there anything about, I'm kind of stumbling around here because I got questions about MUFON, if they have been infiltrated lately and they're just kind of screening the good stuff out and don't investigate the really good stuff, but they stay with the minor things. Or did you notice anything like that?
I think they've had that story ever since MUFON started, and it depends on who you're talking to. They have the volunteers. A lot of volunteers are very, very sincere people who do a lot of work that investigating UFOs. And I think MUFON probably has the best database of anybody that's collecting information.
Yeah, they do have a big database of incidents and reports and so on. But when it comes to investigating certain incidents, like even the Billy Meyer case over in Switzerland, I'm just kind of questioning what they're doing. And you were with on the board of directors from 1993 to 2000, I think you said. But that's 20 years ago, and a lot of things can happen to an organization over 20 years. Well, what do you think there? Is there anything concerns that you can feel right now with MUFON?
There's always been concerns, and I'm sure some of them are founded and some of them are not. But way back then, there were a lot of concerns too. And so I don't know. I mean, I was just the publications, and I heard different things, and I've always heard different things. But I would say I think there's a lot of really sincere investigators in MUFON.
Oh, I know that is. I got a good friend in Nebraska that was the head of Dr. Kasher up there, and he was very serious about it. And but the thing is that there is so much. There's volumes of incidents that is reported to them, so they have to kind of be selective about what they do also, because they can't cover everything.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard all kinds of things, but there's no way I'm not, on the board now, and I don't know.
From what you have seen and what you have investigated and read about and covered and written, what would you take as the best evidence for UFOs and extraterrestrial presence? What is one incident that you would take as the best evidence for that?
I think there's a number of, one of the best evidence is obviously the Aage program now.
What program?
Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program that was with Chris Mellon and Alonzo and Tom DeLay that was on the History Channel. Mm-hmm. And they had, just for scientific evidence, they had the Navy jets that were vectored by the ships, the Princeton and the Nimitz, and where they were able to use radar to get angles and different things. And, for example, the Tic Tac object, which has been described in the TV and studied in detail, and where they measured that in 1 second it reached a peak velocity of almost 300,000 miles per hour, an acceleration equal to 13,000 G-forces and things like that were actually measured. And that's pretty scientific and been analyzed quite a bit and seems to have held up.
Yeah, that is very telling. That the Tic Tac incidents, and but the thing about that part of it also is that during the Second World War, 1945, the Germans built flying discs, and they had the Thule engine and the Red Mercury engine in that thing created an electromagnetic field that affected every atomic molecule inside that bubble. So they could also accelerate extremely fast without squashing the pilots inside. So that technology has been around a long time, and the Americans and the Russians, they did get their hands on that technology after the Second World War when they scoured through the papers. So now they've had 70 years of development. Could it possibly be that what Nimitz saw, or the pilots came from Nimitz saw, could have been our own developed technology and not alien?
I suppose it could, but I gave a talk at the MUFON Symposium this year in July about a sighting my sister and I had in 1968. And we had some evidence that objects had the use of lasers. And I hypothesized that maybe some UFOs are actual, like holograms or that sort of thing that can be produced by lasers. And I just theorized that too.
Yeah, and also I know in your book you mentioned that you talk about possibly there may be a smoking gun that we could, if we stretch a little bit, or maybe not, could call disclosure. Do we really have a smoking gun yet that we can actually call disclosure?
I don't know. Maybe somewhere in the entrails of the government, I suspect they have. Well, I suspect the DIA has much better photography than they reveal, and I imagine they have. From what I know about them, I imagine they have good videos of UFOs that would probably be good smoking guns. I mean, better than what they've shown.
And of course, then we have the Russians. They actually did disclosure here about, I think it's almost 2 years ago now, when Medvedev, he was standing in front of the camera and he explained, he was asked about the UFO issue, and he says, oh yeah, he says, when we take office, we get this dossier, a file with information on the UFOs and the extraterrestrials, but we cannot talk about it. It says we're told that if, there could be panic, so we cannot talk about it. Now, this came from at the time he was the president of Russia. So how much more do we need in order for us to call it disclosure?
I think one problem is with disclosure is that if you're disclosing something, it's about something else. And I think if UFOs wanted to disclose themselves, they would disclose themselves so that everybody knew about it. And I think part of it has to do with the UFOs themselves on how much they want to disclose to people. And like if the government came out and said, oh yeah, UFOs exist. Well, if they couldn't prove it, they wouldn't be able to disclose it too well. And so I think part of it would have to do with the UFOs, the phenomena itself, on whether it wanted to disclose itself to people and how far it wanted to go with that.
Where do you think disclosure will come from? We are going through the slow disclosure process right now. That is kind of obvious. Where do you think it will come from? Will it come from actually from government, or will it come from ET showing up and say, hey, we've been hiding for 2,800 years, but here we are?
Well, I think the amount that the government is disclosing is paving the way.
Yeah.
But I don't think they can actually totally prove that UFOs exist. I think that would have something to do with UFOs themselves.
Yeah. That's well, I'm sure they have enough if they wanted to disclosure. They just don't want to yet. But I think that's for us. That is investigating it and looking at this. We're going to find that out. But now we got 2 minutes left of the show. So let people know where they can get a hold of you, and also mention your books again and where they can, get your books.
I have 3 books: UFOs Today, Inside the Lightning Ball, and Sacred Corridors. And they're the easiest to find on the internet. They're on Amazon.com. And I have a website, irenascott.com, and it lists my books, and all you do is click on a book and it goes immediately to the Amazon.com website, and you can order it there. So it's very easy to get my books.
Yeah, I was on Amazon and I can see them there, so that would probably be the easiest place to get them. And for the ones that want to do further research in what's going on, I think this would be a good place to start or continue. So I think, what is next for you now? Are you writing another book, or are you doing more research?
I'm doing some more research, and I'm recently been. I wrote the afterword and part of a book called Pascagoula. The story continues about the abduction of Calvin Parker, and I've done some research on that.
Okay. I see we are just about to shut down, so we are going out. So I thank you very much, Irena Scott, for being with us, and next week we will be back with another show on the Universal Consciousness Show, and until then, be good to each other.
This has been the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Your weekly guide to a deeper understanding of the all that we are.
Well, in a few years, it will be a matter of common sense to very many people that they're one with the universe. It'll be so simple.
Live Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, hosts, or their guests, please visit universal-consciousness-show.com. That's universal-consciousness-show.com. Remember, there's a shift coming. A new earthly paradigm. A shift to universal consciousness.
Universal Consciousness.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This